We got to review the madness.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
I don't think anybody knows or loves basketball more than Bill Reynolds, and he needs no introduction, of course. Author and Providence Journal columnist for so many years, and he is my esteemed guest this evening. I'm always honored to have him in my presence and on the show, and listen, there's a lot of stuff I can't even keep score on what's going on with the White House. I can't even keep score. It is unbelievable. Just think about what's happened since last Tuesday when Rex Tillerson reportedly on the can, literally, got fired. It blows one's mind. But we'll have a lot to talk about over the course of the week, issues-wise. We are going to take a look-see into the minds of the students who are walking out and protesting and trying to generate some constructive conversation, I think, anyway, about gun safety. And that's going to be a conversation that we'll have this week. We're also going to have top educators. The Commissioner of Secondary Education is going to join us this week, as well as the President of Rhode Island College. So we've got a lot going on, issues-wise. In the meantime, it's just a kind of an adrenaline blowout, you know, when your two local teams are now out of the tournament, and then again, the stories have been incredible. So why don't we start with that? Headlines abound regarding those who are left and those who are not. I tell you, I had Virginia to win it all. So you know where my bracket is in the can. Here's a summary.
Retriever Nation standing tall Friday night.
Man, everyone's excited as heck, you know.
Making March Madness history.
I can barely breathe. Like, I can barely breathe. I don't have words. Like, I don't have words. I'm so hyped for this right now.
Big showdown in the South as the University of Maryland Baltimore County men's basketball team took down #1 seeded Virginia, a feat that's never been accomplished.
Here on campus, the anticipation and excitement growing with every passing second as the Retrievers get closer and closer to making history.
But I never thought that it would be like this.
Yeah, they're going to be surprised. We're so pumped.
Pumped, especially as the team scored buckets after buckets of threes. Fans also understanding when they don't.
You can see that they're a little anxious. As you can see, they're missing some free shots.
Even students not crazy about sports coming out to watch the Cinderella story.
I thought we had a chance, but I never thought that it would be like this. I thought it would be completely the other way around.
But no matter how stacked the deck was against them, loyal fans early on declaring victory, and with good reason.
We're doing a parade around campus right after this, after we win this.
We'll talk about our local teams a little bit later on, but wasn't that incredible, Bill? Wasn't that just absolutely incredible?
Yeah, that's what it is, March Madness. Or as my ex-wife used to call it, March Sadness.
Yes, you write about that all the time.
Yeah.
And that is why, in part, she is your ex-wife?
Big reason.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's a long story.
That's a long story. We don't have a whole show for that. Welcome, my friend. Good to see you. This is some weekend that we had there. Talk to me about the magic of a 16 seed beating a 1 seed, and where does that fall in the comparability of sports upsets over the years? Is it as big as USA over Russia in hockey, 1980?
Probably not.
No?
No, well, you know, the college basketball world's changed over the last X amount of years, 20 years, whatever it is. The rise of the proliferation of AAU basketball. So every kid plays AAU basketball who's playing college, basically. And they come up through these national tournaments and regional tournaments. So they're not as intimidated when they get into a game with the #1 seed or the #2 seed. Not like it used to be, where, oh my God, it's like a different world. This is the same world they've been in since they were 10, 12 years old. Now, obviously, some teams are better and have more better players, but it's not that sense of, oh my God, we can't run with them.
Well, well, that's obviously the case. I mean, they beat Virginia by 20, for heaven's sake. Okay, so what is it? Because we always like to make comparable analogies, right? What is it as big as? I mean, it's never happened before. It was 0-135. So I mean,
no,
we can't downplay.
No, I understand. I understand.
But it's not amongst the most incredible upsets in sports history. The hype over the weekend certainly made it so.
Yes, I don't think so. But again, I mean, I've been around this for so long, and I've seen it evolve, and I've seen it change. And again, one of the reasons why it's changed is AAU. So every kid has played against great players. They come of age doing that. It's not like it used to be where, oh my God, we're going to play the #1 team in the country, and how can we walk on the same court with them because they're mythic and we're not. And that mindset's gone.
Is that good for the game?
Well, I think it's very good.
But you write a lot about your concerns about just the business of college basketball. The AAU thing doesn't, it's not all good.
No, of course not.
Tell me what's bad about it.
I think kids at a very young age, 12, 15, get put into categories. You're either an elite player and you're going to play with the elite AAU team, or you're not. So all that stuff starts probably too young. It certainly starts very young. But it's a business, and it's a shark business. It's a shark's business, basically, college basketball. And it's but
sharks being the people who are exploiting the kids.
Sharks being the one who run it, basically, from the NCAA right on down. I mean, it's a business. I mean, anybody who thinks it's like two little teams playing like a nice little game, go watch Division III. That's what Division III basketball is, basically. Division I basketball is a big-time business. When you're paying coaches $1 million a year, $2 million a year, I mean, what are we talking about here? It's big business. There's no question about it. And when you're playing in 12,000-seat arenas and you want to fill them, and you have season ticket people and all these kind of categories, it's business. Now, we like the sport of it, obviously, and I love the sport of it. I love the spectacle of it, but I don't try and fool myself either. I mean, it's a business. Doesn't mean it's a bad business. It's just a business.
You've been writing about it for so long.
No, I've been writing for so long.
Well, but you've been running it. Yeah. Are we to blame, in part, the media?
Oh, I think
there's an innate interest. I mean, you got to serve the interest. I mean,
no. I mean, I don't think it's the media's fault, particularly. I mean, if there was no interest, we wouldn't cover it. I mean, we don't cover a lot of things that maybe we should cover because we make decisions, the media, that they aren't worth covering. And we don't have enough bodies to cover everything, obviously. So, if you're a Division III college basketball player, you're not going to get a whole lot of coverage, and everybody kind of knows that. In a perfect world, probably you should, but you don't. I mean, that's just the way it is. When you're putting 12,000 people into the Dunkin' Donuts Center routinely and 8,000 into the Ryan Center, I mean, it's business. And I buy 2 season tickets every year to Providence College, which I give up. I got my renewal application before the season was over for next year. I mean, that's a first. They want the money now. They want to whatever they're going to do with it. But no, look, it's a business, and that doesn't make it evil. But it's certainly to sit there and try and make a case that it's not a business, I think, is foolish.
Going back to the upset though in UMBC, I mean, that is regardless of their orientation to just about everybody, meaning the kids' orientation, just about everybody in the game. That is still.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's an incredible story.
Oh, it's of course.
I was told by somebody who was there that the Baltimore television market, no TV station went down and covered UMBC out of Baltimore to play Virginia. They just want to rely on the national because
they're going to get blown out.
They're going to get blown out. Why bother?
Why bother? Sure.
And all of a sudden they're
all. Those things are great. And, I mean, everyone loves underdog stories, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting there watching on TV and like I'm rooting for them. Absolutely.
What happens to kids that are that good? The Virginia kids stunned, absolutely stunned, and taken out of their game and unable to recover, and a coach who is an outstanding coach, and Tony Bennett, literally just watching it happen before his very eyes and can't do a thing about it.
See, I think that goes back to AAU basketball. I guarantee you that many of those kids playing for UMDC, whatever.
UMBC, right. University of Maryland, Baltimore County,
have come through the AAU circuit. They have played against great players. They have been to national tournaments since they were 10, 12, 14, 16. So they're not intimidated. They may not be as good, but they're not like walking into, me and you off the street going to go play the Celtics.
Right, but what about the coach for Virginia sitting there literally knowing there's just like nothing he can do about it? And all these blue chip kids, there's nothing nothing they could do. You could tell there's nothing they could do.
And
about
also,
it.
once that starts to happen, all the pressure's on Virginia, which just makes it worse because they're not supposed to lose that game.
Right.
No way in the world they're supposed to lose that game. And you can give a lot of reasons why they might lose the game, but so what? I mean, people, you're not supposed to lose it.
Well, UMBC didn't win their second game, although they battled like heck against Kansas State. But they've written their history book, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a lifetime moment.
Yeah.
They'll live off that forever.
Forever. When we come back, we'll take a look at the PC and URI programs and what's next. Stay with us.
In all honesty, I think they got more aggressive offensively. And when they, when you're aggressive offensively, you get defensive energy. And, and then they had a couple of big time blocks and we had some missed shots. So I think they got energy off their offense. And most of the time you get energy off your defense. They had a couple of energy dunks, a couple of threes on 50-50 balls. Today it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. And hopefully we can position ourselves to move forward next year if we're fortunate.
He understands the game as well as anybody. He's done such a great job at PC.
Oh, I think he's wonderful.
He's very frustrated, I'm sure, that he's only won one tournament game in his tenure, but he's brought them to the tournament 5 straight years,
which is the most important thing. The most important thing is getting there. Once you're there, then it's like a crapshoot. I mean, everybody's good. It's one game. It's not like the NBA where you're playing 3 out of 5 and 4 out of 7. You're playing one game, and if the game gets away from you early, you're done basically. And it's a game of chance.
It really is.
No, I think it is. I mean, I don't see that as a real blemish on Cooley's record or any coach's record. It's one game. It's the NBA. You play 3 out of 5. Then you play 4 out of 7. Yeah. It's different.
Well, tell me, what's the difference between winning games and building a program? He's built a program.
Yes.
So is Hurley, and we'll talk about him.
Yes.
What's the difference? Explain the difference as you see it.
Oh, I think it's a major difference. Building a program is more than just the outcome of the specific game. It's getting kids through school. It's making kids' lives better. It's creating a good atmosphere. It's not just we go out and we pick the first 3 guys off the street and we bring them in here and they play for like a year or 2 years and then see you later and we bring in more.
Well, there's plenty of that going on.
There's
right
no
now.
question. No. The
one and done syndrome, right?
Well, of course. But I'm saying, Cooley and Hurley, that's not what they're into, basically. That's not their approach.
It's not what they're into because they can't participate at that level, or.
That's a good question.
Yeah, right.
That's a good question.
Because the elite, these top 15 schools out there, or maybe even 10, that literally almost employ one and done. And for those of you who don't know, it means you go to school for 1 year to play basketball, and then you're off to the professional ranks.
Yeah, but that's a slippery slope too.
Right?
It's a slippery slope because you're getting a kid obviously who's talented or he's not one and done. But you're playing in the present tense right there, and you better hope there's another one and done coming the following year because you can't, only a few programs can live off that kind of stuff because it's too disruptive. To me, if I'm a college coach, I want a guy who's there, who I can build with and watch him get better, and the guys around him, they kind of grow together. That's what a real program is, I think, a successful one. Now, obviously, people do it a different way because they can do it. They can get a guy, like, Duke's going to get, has Marvin Bagley, who's 7'1". He's going to go 1 or 2 in the draft, and fine. But it's,
People wonder if Cooley's going to stick around. I think the question is more about Hurley right now, but
I do too.
I don't see Cooley going anywhere other than the NBA if he wants to go.
Yeah,
someday.
I think Cooley, who I know,
this is his college job,
yeah,
right?
and I know Cooley better than I know Dan Hurley. But put it this way, if you're going to ask me, I would say you stay here as long as they want you because you got a great gig, and I think he's a wonderful story and who he is and where he came from. I can remember Ed Cooley walked into the Journal office one time. He's wearing a University of Maryland jacket. He's a senior in high school, and I recognize him because he played at Central. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm here to help Paul Kenyon, who was a school board writer, pick the All-State team." And that's what he did at 17 years old. So he's always been different, and he's always had a sense of something, but he is a unique person. And who does that?
Being around him is like a pure joy.
Yeah.
He's got an energy about him.
Absolutely.
And a personality. Can you imagine being parents in the living room with Cooley trying to sell you on your kid?
Yeah, no.
I mean, you want to be on the team
Yeah,
by the time you're done.
he's got charisma. I mean, charisma's a very kind of undefinable thing, but you know it when you see it, and he's got it.
Yeah.
And I hope, and he is right now, I think he's the perfect coach for Providence College. Somebody grew up.
He's not going broke.
Oh God, no.
His deal's a couple million plus, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if he leaves, it's not going to be for money. And I think, and again, I know him, but I don't know him, obviously all that well. But he's got the perfect job right now. Now, 4 or 5 years in, if they're not winning and people are yelling and screaming and booing, well, that's a whole different issue. But and we all know those things can happen. But I think Cooley is the ideal coach for Providence College right now.
When we come back, is Dan Hurley the ideal coach for URI? So far, so good. Next.
I think during one of our conference games, the student section was yelling at our bench, that, hey, your coach is going to X school. And Fats Russell asked me after the game, was I coaching the next game? So I had a conversation with him. The players, internally, everyone knows, where my head is at.
He thinks so.
I hope so.
Well, but the thing is, and he's overdue, as well as Coach Cooley overdue to come up here and talk about these things, and I'm sure Dan will. The only person who knows whether he's going to stick around is him right now, I would imagine.
Sure.
The two big jobs that are out there are Pitt in the ACC and UConn in the American Conference. Both are damaged jobs.
Yes, they are.
Aren't they?
Yes. I mean, this is.
I think
this isn't UConn.
On this would not be great.
I totally agree with that. This isn't UConn X amount of years ago. This is UConn in a bad conference. This is UConn with dwindling turnout at games because of the bad conference. But the flip side is, for the sake of argument, Hurley reportedly makes about $1 million a year, something like that, whatever. Right? UConn pays double that, at least. So that's the flip side of the argument. And $2 million is $2 million. I mean, it would get my attention. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah,
but I agree with you. I don't think he's going to go.
Well, I've asked you about the controversies in college basketball right now and what could be coming down from the FBI investigation and the like.
That's a great point.
I would think that if Danny, if he pulled the trigger now, I would just be, I wouldn't be shocked, but I would really be surprised. They're going to be blue chip jobs opening up because they're going to be heads that are going to be rolling.
Oh,
here.
sure, without question.
Much better jobs where he could hardly refuse to go. UConn, by the way, would be a stake in the heart of URI. Because everyone's been saying that URI can now be the UConn that UConn used to be.
Right. And they also have a history together. They were big time rivals for 100 years in the Yankee Conference and all that kind of stuff.
And does he want to turn a program around from 0-18 in the ACC with Pittsburgh? Who wants that?
No.
Does he want?
No.
I don't think he's done 2 turnarounds already.
I think he's too smart for that.
Yeah, in Wagner and at Rhode Island, but.
It's not the worst problem to have.
No, but talk to me about what your perception is. Bill Koch talks a lot about this, and I'm sure he'll write some end of the season. Bill, of course, the URI writer for the Providence Journal, he has a lot of thoughts, and so does Kevin McNamara, I think, about the support that the University of Rhode Island needs for it to sustain itself, with or without Dan Hurley, at this level. What's your take about this thing, this culture of Providence College? With the culture of URI coming, the State House, the public university, and this kind of like stunted space between them. What?
That's a great question. I mean, that's a great question because it gets into, as you said, a lot of issues. And if someone had told me X amount of years ago that the University of Rhode Island would be paying a coach $1 million a year to coach basketball, I wouldn't have believed them. So, I mean, anything's possible. And They've got something. They got.
But it's $1.5 million, and is it $2 million?
No,
and,
no,
I don't even think that for Dan in his stint here that it's all about him. It's, can I get my assistants the money? Can I get the facilities? Can I get the charter planes? These big time coaches, if they want to go if they want to fly to Milwaukee tomorrow to see a kid, they get in the plane and they go and they're back for dinner.
No, if they're in Warwick and they want to go to Providence, they hire a plane.
Right.
Right? No, exactly. I mean, it's simplistic. It's an arms race, and if you have it, I want it, and if we both have it, she wants it, and that's what it is.
And PC operates at a higher level that URI does on that program.
Sure, because they make more money.
Because they make more money because the dunk is bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Big East is bigger.
Absolutely.
But then again, being the elite, constant elite of the A10 is no chicken liver either.
Absolutely. Like in the basketball world, to someone who doesn't have a horse in this, like in this particular race, PC is a more higher profile job than the URI job.
And there are more guys probably at the State House, people, I should say, legislators and government types, that are culturally connected to PC than they are URI.
Probably right.
URI gets 9% of its total operating budget. I'm not talking about athletics. I'm talking about the whole damn thing from the state of Rhode Island, which is a disgrace.
Oh, sure. And they're at a moment right now with basketball and Dan Hurley. This is going to define the future right here, what they do with him. And we all know that to get paid $1 million to coach basketball anywhere is not a bad gig. Right? It's not a bad gig. But if they want to keep him and they want to keep what they've just had going, they're going to have to do some things. That's the reality of the business.
But eventually he's likely to go.
Probably.
They have, well, not necessarily.
No,
right?
Not necessarily. Again, it gets into, does his wife like it here? Do the kids like it here? I mean, all those things matter after a while. They don't matter when you're 25 years old. On the way up, you go into the job that pays the more money and the more prestigious job. But you get to be, what, 40, whatever he is. I don't know what he is.
He's in mid-40s now.
Yeah, mid-40s. It's not just about that. It's about where your family likes to live. It's all those other things. And I think that is very good. That's a real plus for you.
He also has, like Cooley, and maybe more so, I don't want to have them competing on this level. They love their kids. He loves those kids.
No, I don't doubt that.
And he's got some kids coming up.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that.
So we'll see.
He's got a great situation here, and hopefully the people running the whole thing and him can make it work somehow, because I get the sense that he likes it here. I've heard that his wife likes it here. His parents, it's close enough. They come up to the games all the time. They like it here. It's been great for him. There's no doubt about it.
Who wins it all?
Who
wins the whole thing?
Who wins it all?
Who knows?
Who
Does
knows?
Calipari win it with Kentucky?
He's got the talent to win it, but it's young talent. I mean, it's that's what makes the tournament so great, because Kentucky could play your team 10 times and win 9, but if they lose like the right one at the right time, they're out.
Good to see you, kiddo.
Nice to see you.
Bill Reynolds. Final word and we come back. So we take a look at the psychology of some of these student protests and the gun safety issue and all of that coming up on the program tomorrow. So I hope you join us. Don't forget, we're here weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO as well, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks very much. Good night.